My sister keeps calling me an incel even though I'm paying for her life. Let's see how she likes it if I leave. My 23M younger sister, 15F, is currently in a phase where she thinks she's the most unique and special person in the world. Because of this, she's also developed some sort of superiority complex against other people's hobbies, especially if she doesn't like them. The problem started when she started using the word incel to insult me and my hobbies out of nowhere. She seemed to notice that this word hurts and disturbs me, so she keeps calling me an incel just to elicit a reaction from me. I'm playing a video game? I'm an incel. I'm watching anime? I'm an incel. I'm building a Gundam? I'm an incel. I've talked to her about it and asked her if she knows the meaning. She knows it perfectly well and she thinks that I fit the description well. I asked her why she thinks so, and she tells me that she just knows that I'm an incel. Because of that, I've just been ignoring her. This seemed to set her off because she began to annoy me on another level, such as pulling my headphones off just to call me an incel and even just using incel as a general nickname for me. I talked to my parents last night and told them that if they don't do anything about her behavior towards me, then I will move out of the house. I'm a teacher, so teenager eating pieces of crap every day are normal to me. However, I don't want the same behavior in my own home. I don't want to deal with the same teenage tantrums that I've been dealing with at work, especially when I'm trying to rest or just minding my own business. At school, I have some sort of authority over the teens that I'm handling. I can call their parents, the guidance counselor, or anyone who could correct their behavior. But at home? I don't have that same authority. I'm just her brother. I can't force her to behave, and my mom doesn't do anything to correct her behavior either. I've had a heart-to-heart talk with my mom and she thinks that my sister is innocent. She thinks that my sister is just joking. She genuinely doesn't think she needs to discipline my sister. I get that siblings being annoying are normal, however, my sister is old enough to know that her actions have consequences. Not only that, but her words can ruin me and my career. I work at the same school my sister is enrolled in. What if she calls me an incel in front of my students? What if she spreads false rumors about me abusing her if I ever discipline her? What if she tells people that I force her to do things against her will? My dad and I pay 50-50 for everything because his salary alone can't sustain all of the bills. I live in the Philippines where even up to 5 generations of families live under one roof. In fact, it's expected for children to take care of and financially support their parents and their grandparents as soon as they have their own jobs. My mom is a volunteer worker in an animal shelter and refuses to seek a paying job because men are expected to be the sole providers. She still justifies my sister's behavior as just being a typical teenager and is begging me to be more understanding because I'm the older and more mature sibling. My dad knows that I am serious about moving out and agreed that they needed to punish my sister. I don't like ultimatums, but I feel like I don't have other choices anymore. I don't want to yell at my sister or even fight with her because I know that it will simply make her attitude worse towards me. Update 1. Shortly after I gave my ultimatum, my dad punished my sister by taking away everything I bought for her, like her laptop, her phone, her PC, and her Switch. He told her, "This is how your life would be without your brother," and basically stored them away somewhere hidden from even myself. Since then, my sister became even more aggressive towards me. She calls me daddy's boy, snitch, coward, and many other names whenever we pass by each other both in public and at home. She even started to throw things at me unprovoked even when I'm not looking. They were soft things like towels, socks, stuffed toys, or handkerchiefs, but still. My mom keeps making excuses for her, and even consoled her when she was crying over her things being taken away. That was when I fully realized and accepted that she was mom's favorite. When I finally told my dad that I wanted to move out, he was understanding. He kept apologizing to me for not doing anything earlier because he was always at work. He's now making up to me by helping me look for an affordable renting space. He's also being a real champ right now for wanting to pay for the first 2 months worth of rent despite me telling him that he doesn't need to. He feels really guilty for not being able to notice my sister's behavior towards me for so long, and he thinks that it's the least he could do for me. I told my dad that he can give back the things I bought for my sister only if she shows real remorse or genuinely apologizes to me. If nothing changes by the new year, then I'll just keep everything for myself or sell them off somewhere. My mom didn't take the news very well. She's extremely cold to me now and told me that I'm abandoning her. According to my dad, she cries every night because she can't accept the fact that I'm moving out. For now, I'm temporarily staying with a kind friend. My dad encouraged me to detach myself from my mom and my sister as soon as possible when I told him she started throwing stuff at me. I don't think I'm going to be having any sort of relationship with my mom or my sister anytime in the future. I do feel really bad for my dad for having to deal with my mom and my sister alone, but I need to leave. My parents gave me up for adoption because they were still in high school when they had me. 24 years later, I found them. My mom had me when she was just 14, and I, 24M, was given up for adoption. Yeah, I know, crazy right? My parents told me about her growing up, and I still have the letter she wrote me, asking if they could give it to me when they deemed fit. It's crazy reading it sometimes and knowing it was a literal child who wrote it, saying she's sorry she couldn't be my mom but hopes I'm happy. She was open to having contact, but we moved for my dad's job when I was 11, and then it seemed impossible to find her. But luckily, I did. She's working at this small restaurant, and I keep going, but she doesn't know it's me. We talk sometimes, and she seems like a nice lady. Sometimes when she says something like, "Do you want a refill, honey?" or uses another term like that, I want to tell her, and let her know that I'm right here. I don't know why it makes me nervous. We talk sometimes, and she seems really genuine. If it's not super busy, she's more open to talking about random stuff. I literally drive 2 hours to come eat at this place just to see her. And it's like she knows me already because I'm there once or twice a week for the past 3 months, so she always says hi with a big smile. But man, if only she knew. Update 1. Well, I did it. I told her, and yeah, it was pretty heavy. My heart was beating super fast the entire time. I waited for her to finish her shift and until they were done closing up the restaurant. After she finished closing up, she saw me waiting in the parking lot. We waved and said hi to each other, but then I told her there was something serious that she needed to know. First, I apologized for keeping it from her for so long. She didn't react until I actually pulled out her letter. Then she started bawling from there, screaming and crying at the same time, and I didn't even have to finish the whole "on your son" speech. She just saw it and knew. It was crazy. The next thing I know, she's hugging me instantly, but then she pulled back and asked if it's okay to hug me. Of course it is, and we're just there hugging and crying in the parking lot. It hit her hard. Her legs gave out for a second, so I had to actually hold her up while she's still hugging me for a minute. What really got to me was her saying, "Look how big you've got." Also, hearing her cry made me cry too. She went back to open the restaurant, and we sat in there for hours talking about so many things. We had coffee, ate a slice of their pie, and just talked about anything and everything that came to mind. She told me that the second time I came to the restaurant, she got a feeling that I felt really familiar, but for her, it was hard to believe it could be me. So that feeling she had was pushed way down. She told me that for years after I was adopted, she would see kids around my age and used to think they were me. Then she would start crying in public. It really messed with her mind and made her depressed, so she didn't want to do the same when she first started seeing me in the restaurant. She said I looked so much like my biological dad when he was younger. We talked about him too. They stayed in contact with each other, in case I ever reached out to one of them so it would be easier to contact the other. I didn't have any hope about finding my biological dad since he was never mentioned, so I'm glad they both planned for this future scenario. She told me about how they both wanted to keep me, especially my biological dad. He didn't want me to be adopted, but he knew they had to because they were just kids. It took him a long time to get past it after I was born. That's why he didn't leave anything behind, because he didn't want to believe he would ever get to see me again. We talked for hours, until almost 2 in the morning. She wanted to know everything about me, but her main concern was, am I happy? Were my parents good to me? Did I have a happy childhood? And I did. I told her, thank you for helping to give me this life. We both cried again, but she cried the most. Everything was very emotional for her. Sometimes she would look really happy, but then get sad again. After my 18th birthday, she was hoping I would find her, that's why she stayed in the same city. But since I didn't, she always thought maybe I resented her, wasn't told I'm adopted, or maybe had decided it was better not to have her around. It made me feel bad for not telling her sooner. She told me it's not my fault, and I did the right thing by going at my own pace. Honestly, she's so sweet. The way she kept looking at me with the biggest smile made me emotional sometimes. It makes you think, how can someone who's been a total stranger your whole life look at you with so much love? It's wild. We learned so much about each other. She asked me if we could have dinner soon to keep talking, and if, at some point in the future, I'm interested, come over to her house so I can meet her husband. That all sounded really great. We exchanged numbers, and after I left, she sent a text telling me thank you for giving her this gift that she didn't know would ever come. My girlfriend came over, and she hugged me while I cried. I wasn't sad, these were happy tears. Everything went better than I expected. There was still emotionally heavy stuff, but I'm still glad that we got to open up to each other. Update 2. Lots of you asked to let you know how it goes meeting my biological dad, and to say it was emotional is an understatement. To be honest, this was more nerve-wracking for me because I didn't know anything about him. With my bio mom, it was different because I watched her from afar and got to know her a little before it all came out. I asked my bio mom if she could be there too just because she knows him better, so it was the two of us waiting for him at this park. He was already crying before we even got to him. This guy is strong too, so he pulled me in for the biggest bear hug, and we were both crying. He told me he wants me to know that they loved me so much, and he loves me. I lost count of how many times he'd come back in for one more hug. This definitely got to him, and he kept saying, "Thank you God," a few times while looking at my face. Hearing him tell me how much they loved me even back then meant so much to me, and not gonna lie, that had me holding him tight too. I'm sure to everyone at the park, it was weird seeing 3 crying people. My bio dad said he cried so many times just driving over here, he didn't think he had any more tears until he saw us. When we were all sitting down, it hit me that my bio mom was not kidding when she said we look alike. Obviously, he's older, but still, the similarities were crazy. He brought gifts too, which was a surprise. It was really nice. He told me I don't have to keep them if I don't want to, but he felt weird not coming with anything, and he's wanted to give this to me for a long time. One was a teddy bear holding a picture frame of him at the hospital holding me. He was 15 years old, it's still crazy to realize that. The other thing was a journal. The journal thing was stuff he said he started writing to me years after I was adopted. He was in therapy, and that helped him cope, thinking he would give them to me one day, his way of still feeling connected to me. I haven't read everything yet, but some of the pages were his thoughts and as if he was talking directly to me. How he felt when they found out she was pregnant, then the adoption, everything going on in his mind when he first got to hold me as a baby. I didn't even know he was at the hospital too. It was not what I was expecting. It really got me. I read some more of what he wrote last night that really got me crying. I'm sad to think how much this affected them emotionally for years. Also, I think it's pretty sweet he wanted to write this for me. We talked about his own life, which was pretty hard, his struggles with home life and the feelings he had about giving me up. Then he wanted to know everything about me, basically with the same questions my bio mom had. I made sure they knew they made the right decision because my life was pretty great. He looked like he wanted to cry when he knew that because that's all they hoped for, and it was something he always wondered about for years. My bio mom left a bit after we were more comfortable so we could talk more in private once it didn't feel too awkward between us. From there he told me stories about how he met my bio mom. Sometimes he'd point out stuff he noticed about me that reminds him of her or me and him having similar likes. My bio dad was really open about sharing everything. Like he really was getting ready for this meeting. He hoped it would happen and prayed every day to see me again because he had so many things he wanted to tell me. Overall, a really good first meeting. I'm glad how it went. He's open to the idea of meeting my parents. After I told them about all this because they definitely want to meet my bio parents again if I'm comfortable with that, obviously if my bio parents are too. Let's see when that happens. I don't know how it's gonna feel for me. They've met each other before I was even born, but I never had them in the same place, so that'll be interesting. Me and my parents met up yesterday to have breakfast so I could tell them everything. My mom was so happy about how it went. She actually cried too when I was telling them about both their reactions. My dad was proud because he knew how hard it was in the months after finding my bio mom and not really wanting to make contact yet. I'm really happy to have their support because it's hard not to feel guilty about wanting to know more about my bio parents. They gave me a really good life, so for a while, it felt like maybe to them I was showing that it wasn't good enough for me and I'd rather have my bio parents. But they told me many times they want me to do this for myself, and they know how much I love them. And I really do. Finding them and meeting them was hard, but it was so worth it to me. And seeing their reactions made it feel even more worth it. I still can't believe it sometimes.
I raised my nephew as my own son because my sister didn't want him. Now her daughter is jealous of her brother because they're turbo poor. When I, 43F, was 18 and my sister, 47F, was 22, she became pregnant with my nephew Luke. My sister and her then boyfriend, who is now her husband, didn't show any interest in Luke when he was born, so I took on the role of caring for him. I enlisted the help of my grandmother, who was a tremendous support and an angel, and she watched over him while I was in my last year of high school in exchange for me cleaning and cooking for her on the weekends. My parents weren't much help either. They would give me about $100 a month for Luke, and if you have a kid, then you know it's not much, so my grandmother and I were the only ones taking care of him. A year after I graduated from high school, I was kicked out with my nephew because my parents, sister, and her husband didn't want to deal with us anymore. My sister said she wished she had never given birth to him. I immediately went to my grandmother, and we visited a family law attorney. I obtained custody of him, and my sister and her husband signed their rights to me, so I will be calling Luke my son instead of my nephew. From then on, lived with my grandmother, and while I attended community college and worked part-time, she looked after my son. It was a lot of work, especially when my grandmother passed away when Luke was 6. In her will, my grandmother left 90% of her things to me. This event prompted my parents and sister to reach out to me under false pretenses to reconnect and meet my son. However, the reunion didn't last long, and I made it clear to them that they could either behave appropriately or never see us again. My dad chose to genuinely reconnect with my son and me, and now we're close. On the other hand, my mom and I don't talk much, but she treats Luke kindly. When Luke was 8, both my sister and I became pregnant. That's when my sister decided she wanted my son back, and started telling him that my husband and I wouldn't love him anymore once my, in her words, actual son arrived. For context, my husband met Luke when he was 5, and we were already together for a year before that meeting. My husband treats Luke like his own, and we got married when my son was 7. We adopted him when he was 9, with his permission. We discovered that my sister was spreading these hurtful ideas when Luke broke down crying one day, expressing fear that we would abandon him once his younger brother was born. He explained what my sister and her husband had been saying, and we reassured him that it would never happen. Luke knows he's not my biological son, but he is undoubtedly my son. After that, I cut contact with my sister and her husband again, and pursued family and individual therapy for my son. When I finally gave birth to his younger brother, I made it clear to Luke that our love for him hadn't changed. About 2 years later, when my sister reached out, I decided to go low contact with her, with the approval of my son and husband. My husband and I live comfortably, while my sister and her husband sometimes struggle financially. My kids engage in extracurricular activities, receive the presents they desire, and go on a big family trip every summer. Meanwhile, my sister and her husband can't afford much. When my niece was around 9, my sister began making comments about how I needed to pay for this or that for my niece, and I told her it wasn't my responsibility. Although I gave my niece the gifts she wanted, and took her out from time to time, it wasn't even close to how I treated my own kids. Now, my second son is turning 17, and my husband and I were discussing getting him an affordable starter car, just as we did for Luke when he turned 17. Simultaneously, my niece is also turning 17, and apparently, my sister told her she would get her a car. However, my sister can't afford to buy her one, so she asked me to do so. I refused, explaining that I hadn't promised her a car, and it's not my responsibility to provide one. My sister got upset and didn't talk to me for a while after that. When my son's 17th birthday arrived, we surprised him with a car. A couple of days later, My niece called me, screaming and crying, asking why I hate her and why I can't treat her the same as her brother. Calmly, I explained that things were different, that her brother is my son, and while she is my niece, I can't buy her the same things as my son. I clarified that, as an aunt, my role involves birthday presents, Christmas presents, and showing up when it matters, nothing more. I emphasized that her brother will always mean more to me than she ever will. Despite my calm explanation, my niece continued yelling and accused me of being unfair before hanging up. Subsequently, my sister called to berate me about doing more. I pointed out that if she hadn't promised a car or my money to my niece, none of this would have happened. It's been a couple of days, and I'm receiving calls from some family and some of my sister's friends, calling me nasty names and some other things. I do feel a sense of guilt because my kids did grow up with more, and I suppose I could have helped more. So, am I the jerk for what I said to my niece? Update 1. To get some names in order, I will be addressing my niece as Emily, and my youngest son as Justin. 2 days after Emily's call, I decided to meet up with her. We decided to meet at a park that's a few minutes away from my home. When we met, Emily seemed normal but a little bit tired. I told her I didn't mean to hurt her in any way, but she needs to understand it's not my job because I'm not her parent. She said she understood that, but she was jealous that her brother and Justin got everything they wanted. I told her that first, Luke isn't her brother, but her cousin because of how things happened. Second of all, they don't get everything they want, they work for it. They get good grades, do chores, and stay out of trouble for the most part. I then asked her the real reason for why she was acting this way, as she never had a problem before this. She started crying, saying it wasn't fair that Luke and Justin get everything they want while she gets barely anything. She claimed that Luke lucked out in life by being adopted by my husband and me. She asserted that she deserves to have what my sons have, and that as family, I have to take care of her too. I told her that she is part of my family, but not my child. I do love her, but she's not my responsibility. I then asked her why she feels so strongly about it. She said that even though her parents take good care of her, she feels like she's just an obligation to them. When she sees how Luke and Justin were raised, she gets jealous because, in her eyes, we don't view the boys as an obligation. According to her, we are a family that's always together, always works through problems, and helps each other. Even though I stayed in her life and took her out with my family, she always felt jealous that she had to be the one to leave. She felt second place and believed that since I took in Luke, I should take her in with no problem. I told her that while I understand her feelings, I'm not going to treat her as my kid. I didn't raise her, but I do love her. It's her parents' job to get her a car or to help her get one. She got more upset, saying that I clearly don't care about her, and she left. I texted her, saying that I do care for her, but I'm not her mom, and it's not my job. After I got home, my husband and I talked, and we decided to call my sister. I told her that my family and I are going full no contact. My sister then asked about how I'm going to get in contact with Emily. I told her Emily is almost an adult, she can contact me if she wants. She then asked me if I was going to get Emily a car. I said no and told her that it's her job, that she's her mother and needs to act like it. Emily needs her to be a mom, and I hung up the phone, blocked, and deleted her number. The next day, I got a call from my mom. She believes that I should give Emily some money for a car if I won't give her one. I told her I wasn't going to do that and hung up because all it's going to do is cause a fight. I then called Dad and explained everything, and he thinks I'm right. Later, my dad called, asking if he could come over on Wednesday. When he showed up, he was visibly upset. Mom gave a big chunk of money out of my parents' retirement fund to my sister. This has caused my parents to have a huge fight, which led my dad to pack a suitcase and stay in a motel for a bit. Now I'm no contact with my sister and mom, and I'll be going low contact with my niece for now. Update 2. About a week after the post, I decided to talk to Emily, and we agreed to meet at my home. I asked everyone not to be home because I wanted her and me to talk privately. When she showed up, she didn't really want to look at me, and I asked her if I could give her a hug. She nodded her head, and the minute I hugged her, she cried. She said she was sorry for how she acted, and I told her she didn't need to apologize. I asked her about how her parents treat her again to understand more about what's going on. She told me that her dad treats her well and tries to spend time with her, but he's busy because he works 2 jobs. While my sister is home more, she usually just keeps to herself, and doesn't really like to be bugged. I then asked her if she feels like she's been neglected. She said no, just sometimes they don't have family time that much because her parents argue a lot, especially about money. Sometimes her mom does make her feel like an obligation, but she knows that they do love her. I brought up her referring to Luke as her brother, and asked if she truly felt that way about him. She explained that she sees him as a cousin but thought that if she played the brother card, I might feel inclined to help her. So I asked her if she knew how I ended up adopting Luke, and she confirmed that she knew, and that her dad had explained what happened. Apparently, my sister sugarcoated it, whereas her dad told her the blunt truth, the complete truth. I then asked her if she would like to spend a fun day out with me on Saturdays. She got excited and expressed that she would really like that. So, that weekend, we visited a restaurant she had been wanting to try, had a good time, and then went to a bookstore because she loves to read, and I bought her a couple of books that she wanted. When Emily and I were supposed to have our second weekend out, I had to cancel because Justin ended up in the hospital. While at football practice, he got tackled, which knocked the wind out of him and caused a bad asthma attack. This happened on a Friday, and Justin stayed at the hospital until Sunday. Emily and I were supposed to go out on Saturday, and that morning I called her and told her I had to cancel. Before I could tell her why, she started yelling at me, saying I never cared about her, and hung up the phone. I tried calling her back, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I sent her a text saying that I didn't mean to hurt her, but Justin was in the hospital, and that we can have our day next weekend, but I never heard back from her. 2 days ago, my family and I were out for a family night when my neighbors called, saying that they called the cops because someone was vandalizing one of our cars. When we got home, the cops were there, and it was Justin's car. The car had scratches, little dents, paint, and there were 2 broken windows. My husband and I checked our security footage, and you could clearly see Emily and someone else vandalizing the car. My husband gave the video copy to the police, and Emily and her friend got arrested the next morning. My sister and mom came to my house, screaming that I was ruining my niece's life, and if I loved her, I would drop the charges. My husband is adamant that we don't drop the charges, and Justin and Luke agree with my husband, so that's where we stand now.
My little sister thinks my boyfriend is a child predator who is using me to get to her, and my mom is on her side. I, 19M, have been dating my boyfriend, 20M, for 6 months now. I currently live at home with my mom, 50F, and my sister, 15F, while I attend a local college. My boyfriend, obviously, is not straight, me as well. My mom was supportive when I came out, and my sister was too. When I started dating my boyfriend, Kev, my sister got a little obsessed with him. It just seemed like a weird teenage sister thing at the time, but it turns out, according to my mom, that she actually has a crush on him. That's weird, but again, a little sister thing, it's not going anywhere. I've told Kev about it, and he thinks it's a little uncomfortable, but he can deal with it. If she kept it to herself, I wouldn't mind it, but she doesn't. She constantly wants to hang out with us whenever he's over, never giving us a moment's peace. Last time Kev was here, we were in my room, and she walked in on us making out, without knocking by the way, and huffed before slamming the door. After he left a few hours later, she came into my room again to talk to me. She proceeded to tell me, to my absolute shock, that Kev was straight and I was abusing him by not letting him leave me. I didn't even know what to say, so I just asked her what made her think he wasn't. She said he was obviously into her instead and was using me to see her. I completely lost it. Months of borderline harassment towards my boyfriend, and that's why? I told her that her creeping on him and making him feel uncomfortable didn't count as interest, and that she was a horrible person and an awful sister. I told her to stay away from my boyfriend, and if she ever brings him up again, don't be surprised when the back of my hand meets her face. She started crying and ran off into her room, but I don't care. I'm tired of having to act like she never does anything wrong. She essentially called my boyfriend a PDF file and accused me of abuse. I'm fed up with it. My mom said Kev isn't allowed back at our place until I apologize to my sister. I said good, I don't want my creepy sister around him, and we can just hang out at his apartment anyway. I'm spending pretty much all my time at school and his place. As time passes, though, I keep wondering if I overreacted. She's 15, but it's still disgusting. I just couldn't take it anymore. Edit. Hey, it's me. I realized I forgot to add some needed info. I wasn't thinking about it at the time. Firstly, my sister forcibly entered my room. I locked my door, and she jimmied it open. She does it all the time, so I forgot to mention it. Secondly, for those confused as to why my mom isn't helping, it has been like this my entire life. Mom doesn't care about me, at least not nearly as much as my sister. Basically, 15 years ago, the doctors told my mom that there was like a 5% chance or something that she would be born healthy and alive. When she told my dad this, he left her, and I haven't seen him since. Good riddance either way, but the point is my sister is her miracle baby. She's the golden child of the family, and she can do whatever she wants with impunity because she almost wasn't born. She's also the straight A varsity cheerleader. She gets everything she wants, literally. I don't have anything of my own other than my room, which is half the size of hers, my phone, and my boyfriend. And she keeps trying to take all three. She thinks she can have my boyfriend because she has everything else I do and is jealous that there's one thing, just one thing, that is not hers. It's so infuriating and dehumanizing. I've been talking to Kev, and we've been thinking of moving in together, at least until we finish school. We've both gotten into the same 4-year school, so it'll be good there too. The more I've thought about it, the more I blame my mom. She took all my prospects away and gave them to my sister. It's cartoonishly neglectful. I've spent my whole life feeling like an afterthought, and now there's someone in my life that cares about me so much, and it just feels amazing. Of course she'd want to take him away from me. Sorry I forgot to mention all this, I was just furious. I'll be going no contact as soon as I can with both of them. Thank you all. Update 1. One final update due to the final nail in the goddamn coffin. When my sister was 12, my mom got her a dog, a little beagle puppy named Baxter. About a month into having Baxter, my sister decided she was bored of him and unofficially gave him to me. Since then, I've been feeding him, walking him, paid for his training, which if you've ever had a beagle you know is not easy, and everyone in the house agrees Baxter is my dog. They refer to him as my dog. They tell me get your dog away from me and let your stupid dog in, stuff like that. He absolutely loves me and I love him. Last night, my mom called me into the living room, where she and my sister were, and told me that if I didn't apologize, she'd take my keys to the junky car that I paid for, so I couldn't see Kev or go to finals, and she'd put Baxter, the dog I completely care for and who only responds to me, in the kennel. I told her she had no right to do either of those things. She said to get over myself and just apologize, and as long as you're under my roof, I can do what I want. I still refused and just went up to my room and packed. After both of them had gone to sleep, I took Baxter and all my belongings and went to Kev's. He'd always told me that if things got rough I could come to his place, day or night, rain or shine. I always planned to take Baxter with me when I moved out anyway, so we had already put in a request with management for a pet. We'll just keep him a secret until it gets approved. This morning, I woke up to like 4 missed calls and several texts from my mom that amounted to, "Where are you? Where's the dog? Are you still picking your sister up from cheer? What the hell have you done?" I told her that I'd be back in a few days to move any furniture I needed out and she could sell the rest. She told me to bring my sister's dog back, and I told her to screw off. My sister doesn't care about Baxter and never has. He'd probably starve to his grave if I left him there. She told me she's junking all the furniture and I'm not permitted in the house anymore. Whatever. I'm officially moving in with Kev. It'll probably come back to bite me soon, but I just don't care. Being homeless would be better than being there. I don't know where my life's gonna go, but for right now, I'm happy. Thank you to everyone who's been nice to me.
My friend's boyfriend gave me an ultra expensive gift for my birthday when he is turbo poor on a day-to-day basis, and I don't know how to feel about it. So, last week, I, 26F, celebrated my birthday with my friend group. We're all fairly close, and while we've never explicitly discussed presents or gifts, we all kind of naturally fell into an unspoken pattern regarding the kind of birthday gifts we give each other. We exchange gifts, but they're usually in the 10 to 40 euro range. Think of things like a book, a voucher for theater tickets, or maybe a nice bottle of wine, that kind of stuff. We're all young professionals or grad students, and that just fits our general income level. A good friend of mine, 26F, brought her boyfriend, 28M, to the party, and he gave me a gift of his own, separate from my friends. Without going into too much detail, it was a small object that had a very thoughtful connection to a trip I took in winter. I was genuinely very thankful for the gift and thought it was lovely. However, when I unpacked the item at home, something about it caught my eye. Certain parts of the item that I would have expected to be made of glass didn't look like glass. I ended up Googling the maker's mark on the bottom and found the exact same item online, priced at 750 euros. Now, it'd be one thing if this guy were a trust fund kid for whom that kind of money was just peanuts. I'd still feel uncomfortable, but at least there'd be some logic to it then. But my friend's relationship with this guy already has massive problems, largely centered around him being underemployed and making her pick up the tab for their shared lifestyle to an undue degree. We honestly all expect the relationship to fizzle out soon because they obviously aren't compatible in some key aspects. So now I've got this 750 euro item on my shelf, and I've no clue how to handle this. It feels extremely inappropriate to have this thing. I'd feel uncomfortable accepting this sort of gift from almost anyone I know, but the fact that it's a friend's romantic partner, and said friend has issues with her partner's handling of his finances, and I'm also a lesbian, and her boyfriend knows this, just makes it even worse. It's also a highly specific item that I don't think he'd be likely to just have, so I'm pretty certain he must have bought this for the occasion and must be aware of its value. What do I do? My friend seems to be totally unaware of the value of the item. Do I tell her about it? Do I contact the boyfriend and ask him what the hell he was thinking? Update 1. I ended up texting my friend and telling her that I had researched the gift and discovered it was worth a very inappropriate amount of money. She was extremely surprised by the entire situation, especially considering her boyfriend, now ex, but more on that later, is perpetually broke and makes her foot the bill for their shared lifestyle. She came over to my place, and together we called him on speakerphone, where she demanded some answers. Long story short, he stole it from his own mother. He's still being a bit shady about some details, but we managed to piece together the sequence of events to a satisfactory degree. My friend was supposed to be coming to my birthday party straight from work. When she left her office, she realized she had forgotten the gift she had planned for me, which was a book, by the way, at home. Since she was already running late and her place is pretty far from both her work and my flat, she chose to text her boyfriend, who was having dinner at his parents' home at the time. She knew he was there and knew his parents lived close to me, so she asked him to just buy a copy of the same book at a bookstore on his way to my place so they'd have a gift. For reasons known only to him, he did not choose this simple, reasonable solution to the "we forgot our gift" issue. Instead of leaving 5 minutes early to pick up another copy of the book, he chose to just grab a random item off his mother's living room shelf, without asking her. He had no idea what it was, just thought it looked pretty, took it, and stuffed it in a paper bag. He also did not text back my friend or react to her calls, so she reasonably assumed he hadn't read her message and ended up going back to get the book, which was why they arrived separately and with separate gifts. Meanwhile, The boyfriend had unknowingly gifted me not just any antique. No, this item had been passed down to his mother from her 3 times great-grandmother. It had been in his family's possession for literal centuries and was the only tangible connection his mother still had to her home country, which, incidentally, is also my mother's home country, something he wasn't aware of, meaning that what I thought was a thoughtful connection to my trip there was a total coincidence. He had no idea of the item's cultural significance. My friend immediately made him call his mom to fess up to the entire situation. His mother had been running herself ragged trying to figure out where this item disappeared to for days. Obviously, she never suspected thievery and was blaming herself terribly for having lost something this important. The boyfriend actually had the gall to try to convince her not to make her call his mom. He wanted to sweep the entire thing under the rug. Of course, we didn't let that happen. His mother came by my place this morning, and I returned the item to her, along with some apologies for not starting investigations immediately and some nice chocolate. We had a lovely conversation about our shared cultural heritage, and I assured her that the item had been treated with dignity for the entire time it was in my possession, and we parted ways with a hug. She also told me that my initial estimate of the item's value was incorrect. It's actually worth even more money. It would probably sell for a 4-figure sum at auction. I don't know what she wants to do with her son, but I hope she whoops him real good. My friend, for obvious reasons, broke up with him. So, lessons learned: Google suspicious gifts, and lock away your sentimentals and valuables when people you're not entirely sure about come over. The gall of this man.